She woke at 5 in the morning on the day of her wedding. Not because she was excited. Not because she could not sleep from joy. She woke because she had not slept at all. She had spent the night sitting on the floor of the room she had shared with her younger brother since childhood. A room she was leaving that morning, forever. And she had made herself a promise. She did not know how. She did not know when. But she promised herself that this moment, this flaw, this powerlessness, was not the end of her story. She was 16 years old. She was already fighting. They just didn't know it yet. Welcome to Human, Not Gender. This channel exists because some stories are too important to be summarized, too complex to be reduced to a headline, and too real to be dressed up in anything other than the truth. We tell stories about gender, about patriarchy, misogyny, misandry, and the systems that shape the lives of real people in ways most of us never see. We do not take sides. We take truth. And we follow it wherever it leads. Today we begin with Amina. A woman I spoke with over several weeks. A woman who gave me permission, and specifically asked me, to tell this story in full. Without softening it. Without looking away from the parts that are hard to hear. So I will not soften it. I will not look away. And I ask the same of you. This episode is long, because Amina's story deserves the time. Stay with it. Every act earns the next one. Let us begin at the beginning. To understand what was taken from Amina, you must first understand what she was. She was, by every account including her own, a child who was inconveniently alive. Not in a tragic sense, she was loved, after a fashion. But she asked too many questions. She remembered too much. She noticed things adults preferred to keep unnoticed. She was the second child in a family of 5. Her older sister Firdaus was quiet and lovely and knew instinctively how to make adults comfortable. Her 3 younger brothers were beloved simply for being boys. A fact Amina observed from the age of 6 and never stopped filing away. She was exceptional at mathematics. Her teacher, a man named Mr. Adamu who wore the same blue shirt every Monday, once told her father at a parents' meeting that Amina was the most analytically gifted student he had taught in 15 years. Her father nodded. Then he asked how her domestic science grades were. At home, Amina was responsible for chores that her brothers were not. She cooked alongside her mother from age 8. She fetched water. She cleaned. When relatives visited, she served. Her brothers played. She never complained openly. She had watched what happened when her mother complained openly. The cold silences, the withdrawal of warmth, the way her father's mood could chill an entire household for days. She learned early that survival in that home required a particular kind of strategic invisibility. But inside, behind the compliance, behind the smile, behind the perfectly completed chores, Amina was building something. She kept a list. Not in a notebook. Not yet. But in her head. A list of everything she was going to do when she was free. Become a nurse. Travel alone to a city. Read every book in the secondary school library. Learn to drive. Choose her own clothes. Choose her own husband. Choose her own time. She was 9 years old and already fluent in the grammar of longing. Amina's community operated according to a set of rules that were never written down, never debated, and never questioned, because questioning them required a language the community had never developed. The rules were simple and total. Men led. Women supported. Girls were prepared. Boys were raised. A girl who completed secondary school was considered educated enough. A girl who pursued university was considered suspicious, likely to develop ideas that would make her difficult to marry. And a difficult woman was the greatest failure a family could produce. The women in this community were not, for the most part, miserable. That is the complexity that simple narratives about patriarchy often miss. Many of them had found genuine meaning inside the roles assigned to them. Many of them loved their husbands, their children, their homes. Many of them would have told you, sincerely, that they were content. But contentment inside a cage is still a cage. And the cruelest feature of the cage was this: most of the women inside it had been born there. They had never seen outside. So they had no reference point from which to grieve what they had never been allowed to want. Amina's mother, Hajia, was one such woman. Hajia had been married at 17. She had produced 5 children. She ran the household with precision and quiet authority, the kind of authority women in these systems are permitted, which is authority over things, never over decisions. She was, in private, a woman of sharp intelligence and dry humor. She could read a person's character within minutes and was almost never wrong. She had opinions about everything: politics, religion, the neighbors, the price of grain. And she voiced them freely to Amina in the kitchen, where the conversations of women were permitted to be honest. But she voiced nothing to her husband. Not because she feared him, exactly, but because she had learned, as women in these systems learn, that voicing things to men cost more than it was worth. Amina absorbed all of this. She absorbed the intelligence her mother performed only in the kitchen. She absorbed the authority her mother exercised only over things. She absorbed the silence her mother had perfected over decades. And she decided, with the fierce private clarity of a girl who has seen enough, that she would not become it. Haruna first saw Amina at the weekly market when she was 15. She was buying tomatoes. She was arguing with the seller about the price, politely but firmly, the way her mother had taught her, and she was winning the argument. Haruna, standing nearby, watched this with what he would later describe, to mutual acquaintances, as admiration. What he saw in Amina was not a person. What he saw was a quality, that particular bright, directed energy, which he believed would make an excellent addition to his household. He made inquiries within the week. He found out her family name, her father's occupation, their financial standing, whether there were any, as the community phrased it, problems with the girl. He was told there were no problems, other than that she was perhaps a little too clever for her own good. Haruna considered this and decided it was a manageable quality. He approached Amina's father through a mutual connection, a respected elder who served as an informal broker for such arrangements. A meeting was held. Tea was served. The elder spoke of Haruna's standing, his vehicles, his character, his family lineage. Amina's father listened. He asked one question: is he a man who maintains his home? The elder confirmed that he was. The negotiation took 4 months. Bride price was set. A date was identified. Conditions were agreed upon: that Haruna would cover the wedding costs, that Amina would leave school upon marriage, that she would move to his compound immediately after the ceremony. Leave school. That condition, the erasure of her future, agreed upon like a line item in a contract, was settled between 2 men over tea, without Amina in the room. She found out everything on a Tuesday morning, as she was heading to school. Her father called her back. She stood in the doorway with her bag on her shoulder. He sat in his chair. He did not look at her. You are getting married next month. Haruna is a good man. He will provide. The bride price is settled. It is done. Amina stood absolutely still. Then she asked, did anyone ask what I want? Her father looked up then. And his expression was not cruel. It was something worse than cruel. It was genuinely confused. As though the question itself, did anyone ask what I want, was so outside the parameters of how he understood the world that he could not immediately locate a response to it. Eventually he said, you are a child. What you want will come in time. For now, this is what is good for you. Amina walked to school. She sat through every class. She took notes. Then she walked home and began to fight. The week after her father's announcement, Amina mounted a resistance that was, for a 15-year-old girl with no money, no legal power, and no influential allies, genuinely remarkable. First, her mother. She went to Hajir in the kitchen, their honest space, and told her everything she felt. That she was too young. That she had plans. That she was terrified. That she did not know this man. That she refused. Her mother wept. Silently, with great control, in the way of women who have long practice at weeping without being seen to weep. Then she said, Amina, I hear you. Every word you are saying, I hear it. But listen to me carefully. If I go to your father and challenge this, he will not change his mind. He will punish us both. He will take you out of school right now, today, and he will move the wedding date forward. I cannot protect you by fighting him. I can only protect you by staying close to you. Do you understand? Amina understood. She also understood that her mother's caution, however rational, left her alone in this fight. Second, her teacher. She went to her class teacher after school, a woman named Mrs. Ease who had written in Amina's report card the previous term, this student has a future that must be protected. She told Mrs. Ease everything. The date. The man. The condition about leaving school. Mrs. E's face moved through several expressions. Distress. Helplessness. Something close to shame. And then she said, Amina, if I report this to the headmaster, he will call your father. Your father will know you spoke outside the family. The punishment for that, in a family like yours, may be worse than what you are already facing. I am not permitted to contact authorities without the school's involvement, and the school will not move on a family matter without evidence of physical harm. I am so sorry. I wish I could do more. Third, the NGO poster at the health clinic. Amina wrote them a letter. 2 pages, front and back, in her best handwriting. She described the arrangement, the date, the condition about school, her age. She asked for intervention. She slipped the letter under the clinic door at 6 in the morning before anyone arrived. She never received a response. Fourth, and this one cost her dearly, she went directly to Haruna. She found out where his compound was. She walked there alone, which was itself an act that would later be used against her. She knocked on his gate and asked to speak with him. He appeared surprised, perhaps even impressed by her boldness. She told him, standing at his gate, that she did not want to be married, that she was too young, that she had plans for her education, that she was asking him, directly, to withdraw the arrangement. Haruna was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, with a particular kind of calm that was its own form of violence, "Your boldness is exactly why you need a husband to guide you. I will speak to your father about this, but I will not be withdrawing." He went to her father that same evening. Haruna told AMINA'S father that she had come to his compound alone and attempted to end the arrangement. Her father's response was swift and calculated. That night, he called AMINA into the main room. Her mother stood in the doorway of the kitchen, close enough to hear, not permitted to intervene. Her father did not shout. He was not a man who shouted. He spoke in the low, controlled register of a man who has decided something and is simply informing others of the verdict. "You went to that man's house. Alone. Without my knowledge. Do you understand what you have done? You have shamed this family in front of a man who was willing to honor us. You have shown yourself to be the kind of girl no decent community wants. I am ashamed of you." AMINA said, "I was trying to speak for myself." Her father said, "You have no self to speak for until you are a wife. Until then, you speak when I permit it." Her punishment was immediate and total. She was removed from school the next morning. Not at the end of term. Not after any grace period. The following morning, her school bag was taken from her room and placed in the storehouse. She was not permitted to leave the compound without a family member present. Her interactions with neighbors were monitored. Her younger brothers were instructed. She heard this through the wall, not to speak to her about school or about the marriage. She was, in every practical sense, placed under house arrest. For 3 weeks, AMINA lived in that compound as a kind of ghost, present, functional, performing every domestic task assigned to her, while inside she was conducting a silent reckoning with what had just happened. She had tried the direct approach. She had been punished. She had tried the institutional approach. She had been ignored. She had tried the personal approach. She had been reported. Every door had not just closed. Every door had been locked, and someone had pocketed the key. On the 14th night of her confinement, AMINA retrieved the notebook she had begun keeping under the loose floor mat in the kitchen. Different from her later one, this one was raw, urgent, full of crossings out, and she wrote 3 words at the top of a new page. "I am still here." She underlined it twice. Then she hid it again and went to prepare the morning meal. The wedding was on a Saturday. The dress was yellow, a color AMINA had always loved, associated in her mind with the bright mornings before school, with freedom, with forward motion. She suspected the color was not chosen for her. She suspected it was chosen because it photographed well and made the bride look cheerful. Women came from across the community. They sang. They danced around AMINA with a joy that was not insincere. They genuinely believed they were celebrating something good. And they told her she was lucky, that Haruna was known to be generous, that she would want for nothing material. Her aunties applied powder to her face and told her she was beautiful. Her cousins adjusted her dress and told her she was ready. Nobody asked how she felt. Her sister Fardors sat beside her for a long moment before the ceremony and held her hand. She said nothing. She simply held her hand. AMINA understood that this was the most Fardors could offer. The wordless solidarity of a woman who had stood in the same yellow dress, in a different season, and felt the same collapse of future. AMINA'S father walked her forward. He looked proud. A genuine, unqualified pride that was the most disorienting thing she witnessed that day. Not calculated pride. Not performative pride. Real pride, in a man who believed he had done right by his daughter. The ceremony was conducted. Vows were spoken. Vows that bound AMINA legally and religiously without her consent having ever been meaningfully obtained. The witnesses signed. The elder blessed the union. AMINA answered every prompt. She smiled at the correct moments. She kept the promise she had made to herself on the floor of her childhood room. She was still there. They just couldn't see it. At the end of the evening, as AMINA prepared to leave the home she had grown up in, her mother embraced her, held her very tightly, whispered in her ear, "Remember who you are, my daughter. Whatever happens, remember." AMINA nodded. She remembered. Haruna's compound was larger than the home AMINA had grown up in. There was a main house, a kitchen block, a small garden, and a gate that was always locked from the inside. On the first morning of her marriage, Amina woke before dawn and spent a moment, before memory caught up with her body, not knowing where she was. Then she remembered. And the day began. Haruna ran the household on a system she understood within the first week. There were no written rules. Rules in such households rarely need to be written because they are enforced not through explicit prohibition, but through the architecture of expectation. You were expected to be awake before him. Expected to have food prepared before he asked for it. Expected to be available, emotionally, domestically, physically, at his convenience. Expected to be grateful. Amina performed all of it. Precisely. Without complaint. But she also, quietly, continued to exist inside the performance. She carried the list in her head. She expanded it. She added, learn what a woman is legally allowed to do in this country. Find out if there is any way back to school. Understand exactly what rights, if any, I have. Haruna was not physically violent. She wants that to be stated clearly, because she does not wish his story reduced to what it was not. But Haruna had other instruments. When Amina asked if she could visit her mother, he did not say no. He said, after the house is done. After the children are settled. After I return from the trip. After. Always after. Until after became never, disguised as reasonable postponement. When she asked if she could read in the evenings, he did not say no. He said the light bothered him. Could she read in the day? But in the day there was cooking and cleaning and the children. So she read in fragments, pages here, paragraphs there, like a woman eating in secret. When she expressed an opinion about anything beyond the home, politics, a news story she had overheard, a neighbor's situation, he looked at her with a particular expression. Not anger. Amusement. The amusement of a man who finds a child's seriousness charming and slightly ridiculous. That look, she told me, was worse than shouting. When someone shouts at you, they are acknowledging that you have the power to provoke them. When they look at you with amusement, they are telling you that you are not even worth the energy of anger, that you do not matter enough to be taken seriously. By 17, she had 2 children and a marriage that functioned perfectly on the surface. By 20, she felt like a painting that had been hung in the wrong room, present, visible, decorative, and entirely in the wrong place. One of the features of Amina's situation that she found most exhausting, and that is rarely discussed in conversations about patriarchy, was not her husband. It was everyone else. The community around Haruna's compound was small and densely interconnected. Everyone knew everyone. Everyone watched everyone. And the collective project of enforcing gender norms was not left to husbands alone. It was distributed across the entire social fabric, performed by women as much as men. Haruna's mother visited 3 times a week. She had a particular genius for commentary that arrived in the syntax of helpfulness. I noticed the kitchen floor was not swept this morning. I know it is difficult when you are still learning. I was the same when I was young. What she meant was, I am watching. You are being measured. You are falling short. The neighboring women, wives of men in Haruna's social circle, monitored Amina with the thoroughness of a committee. If she spent too long at the water point, it was reported to Haruna as socializing. If she was seen speaking to a man, any man, including the clinic nurse, it was mentioned, casually, over tea. If she seemed too confident, too articulate, too not sufficiently diminished for a young wife, there was a particular word the women used. Proud. They said Amina was proud. They said it the way they might say she was ill, as a diagnosis. As something that needed treating. One afternoon, a woman named Hawa, whose opinion carried particular weight in the community, sat with Amina and told her, with genuine concern in her voice. My daughter, a man like Haruna, a man of means, a man of standing, he has many options. You must learn to be grateful. You must learn to be soft. Proud women lose their homes. Amina thanked her. Then she went back into the house and added a line to the notebook inside the cooking pot. The line read, they are afraid of me. That means I am still dangerous. She was right. By the time Amina was 22, the notebook inside the cooking pot was almost full. She had written in it across 6 years of marriage. Not continuously, but in the stolen moments available to a woman in her position. Late nights. Early mornings before anyone woke. The brief privacy of a trip to the water point. The notebook contained her list. Her observations. Her anger. Carefully managed and compressed into sentences. Fragments of things she had heard on the radio that she wanted to remember. Names of organizations she had read about on printed flyers. Questions she wanted answered. It was the most complete record of herself that existed. Her breaking point came from the smallest source. Her daughter Hassia, 3 years old, brilliant, relentless, pointed at Amina's old school bag one afternoon. The bag had survived every transition, tucked at the back of a high shelf where Haruna never looked. "Mama, what is that bag?" Amina said it was a school bag. Hassia asked, "Will I have one?" Amina said, "Yes." Hassia asked, "Will you come to school with me?" Amina looked at her daughter's face, open, curious, entirely unafraid, not yet taught which questions were dangerous, and something inside her completed its fracture. Not dramatically, not with tears or shouting. It was the quiet, total fracture of a person who has arrived at the precise moment they realize they will not survive their own life if they do not change it. She answered Hassia's question. She said, "I am going to try. I want to stop here. We are almost halfway through Amina's story, and I want to name something that I think is easy to miss when you are moving through a narrative this dense. Amina was not failed by evil people. She was failed by ordinary people performing ordinary roles inside an extraordinary system of harm. Her father loved her, in the only way he had been taught to love a daughter. Her mother protected her the only way she knew how. The teacher genuinely cared but was constrained by institutional structures that prioritized family autonomy over child safety. The community women who surveilled her were themselves surveilled. They enforced norms they also lived under. Even Haruna, and I want to be careful here, because I am not asking you to excuse him, was a man so entirely shaped by a system that granted him authority over women that the idea of genuinely consulting a wife was, for him, not a cruelty but a simple non-occurrence. It did not happen because it did not occur to him that it should. This is what makes systems of patriarchy so durable. They do not require villains. They require compliance. And compliance is so much easier to produce than cruelty, because it does not feel like anything. It just feels like normal. The second half of Amina's story is about what happens when a woman inside a system of compliance decides to stop complying. And I want to warn you, because she asked me to warn you, it gets harder before it gets better. Much harder. The organization arrived in Amina's community when she was 24. She heard about the workshops through a woman at the water point. Not a friend, barely an acquaintance, who mentioned it in passing, the way you mention a market closing or a road being repaired. A small fact. Almost not worth noting. Amina noted it. She told Haruna she was visiting a sick neighbor on the first morning of the workshops. She walked to the community hall feeling the particular combination of guilt and defiance that would become very familiar over the next 2 years. She sat in the back. She said nothing. She listened to a facilitator, a woman not much older than herself, speak about legal rights, bodily autonomy, the difference between custom and law. The facilitator said, "Custom tells you what your community has decided. Law tells you what the state has decided. Neither of those is the same as what is true, or what is right. Knowing the difference is the beginning of everything." Amina had never heard those three categories separated before. Custom, law, truth. In her world, they had always been the same thing. She went home and lay awake thinking about the space between them. She returned the next week. And the next. In the third session, she raised her hand and asked a question she had been carrying for 8 years. If a woman was married before she was 18, is there anything she can do? Legally. The facilitator looked at her calmly, answered carefully, gave her 3 specific pieces of information. Real, actionable, verifiable. Amina memorized every word. On the walk home, she felt something she recognized from childhood but had not felt since. She felt like herself. Haruna found out about the workshops from Hawa, the community woman whose opinion carried weight, who had seen Amina entering the community hall on her way back from the market. He did not mention it immediately. This was characteristic of him. He preferred to gather information before confronting it, the same methodical patience he applied to his business. He mentioned it on a Thursday evening, after dinner, in the tone of a man raising something of mild administrative interest. "I hear you have been attending meetings at the community hall." Amina had prepared for this conversation. She had rehearsed it. She told him the workshops were about health literacy and household management, which was partly true. She told him she had thought it would help her be a better mother, which was both true and entirely beside the point. Haruna listened. Then he said, "If you want information about running a home, you can ask me, or ask my mother. You do not need to sit in a room with strangers listening to ideas that are not suitable for a married woman. You will not be going back." Amina did not respond. She went back the following week anyway. When Haruna found out, again through Hawa, who had become an efficient informant, the conversation that followed was no longer mild or administrative. He did not hit her. Let that remain on the record. But he stood in the doorway of the kitchen, the only room in the house where Amina had historically had even a fraction of authority, and he spoke to her for 22 minutes. She counted. He told her she had disobeyed him in front of the community, that she had made him look weak. That every man in his circle was now asking what kind of husband allows his wife to run around attending meetings against his instructions. He told her she was ungrateful for everything he had provided. He told her she was the kind of woman men warned other men about. He told her that if she embarrassed him again, the consequences would be ones she had not yet imagined. Amina waited until he had finished. Then she said, very quietly, "I heard you." And she went back the week after that. Haruna's response to Amina's continued attendance at the workshops was not a single confrontation. It was a campaign. Methodical. Extended. Designed to wear her down across weeks. First, financial control. He reduced the household allowance he gave her to the bare minimum required to feed the children. The amount she had previously used for small personal necessities, soap, a notebook, the rare packet of biscuits, disappeared from the calculation. She was, in every financial sense, returned to a state of total dependence. Second, social isolation. He told her mother, in a visit that Amina was not present for, that Amina's behavior had become erratic and that for the sake of family harmony, visits should be reduced until the situation settled. Her mother, who had no power to override a son-in-law's wishes in this context, complied. The visits that had been Amina's most reliable source of emotional sustenance dropped from weekly to once a month. Third, the children. He began, in quiet, undeniable ways, to position himself as the children's primary authority. When Amina disciplined the children, he overruled her. When the children asked permission for things, he directed them to ask him, not their mother. When Hasia, who was fiercely attached to Amina, cried for her mother, Haruna intervened and redirected with a firmness that was not quite threat but was clearly cousin to it. Amina understood what this was. It was a message delivered through the bodies of her children. The message was, I control what you love. Consider carefully what you do next. Fourth, the direct threat. One night, after the children were asleep, Haruna sat across from Amina and said, in the same calm register he used for everything, there are men in this community whose wives have embarrassed them. Those men found solutions. I am a patient man, Amina. But patience runs out. The workshops stop. Your education ideas stop. Or I will find a solution too. She asked him, directly, what does that mean? He said nothing. He simply held her gaze until she looked away. That night, Amina retrieved the notebook from the cooking pot and read every entry from the beginning. Then she wrote, on the last remaining page, he is afraid. The afraid ones make threats. The secure ones don't need to. She was terrified. And she was not wrong. Haruna escalated to Amina's father. He visited the family compound and presented the situation to Amina's father in the terms most likely to produce the desired response. That his daughter was causing chaos in the marriage, was attending unsanctioned gatherings, was challenging her husband's authority, and was, in the phrasing Haruna used carefully, becoming a disgrace to both families. Amina's father drove to Haruna's compound within 2 days. The meeting between father and daughter that followed was the worst of Amina's life. She has told me this clearly. Her father sat in Haruna's front room, Haruna's chair, Haruna present throughout, and he delivered a verdict. I did not raise you to be a troublemaker. I did not marry you to a good man so that you could humiliate him and humiliate this family. You have been told. You have been warned. You have ignored everyone. I am telling you now, and I am telling you as your father, if you continue down this road, you are no longer my daughter. I will not receive you in my home. I will not support you. You will have nothing from me. Nothing. Do you understand what I am saying to you? Amina looked at her father, the man whose pride on her wedding day had been the most disorienting thing she had ever seen, and she understood that he meant every word. She said, I understand, Baba. He left. She sat in the room after he had gone. Haruna watched her with something she could not fully read. Part satisfaction, part, she thought, a small flicker of discomfort at what he had set in motion. She did not cry in front of Haruna. She waited until she was alone in the kitchen. Then she allowed herself exactly 10 minutes. 10 minutes for the father who had loved her and failed her at the same time, simultaneously and without contradiction, for her entire life. Then she stood up, washed her face, and started dinner. The community trial was not a formal proceeding. It had no official name, no appointed judge, no written record. It was a gathering of elders and senior women, convened at the request of Haruna, facilitated by the same elder who had brokered the original marriage, at which Amina's behavior would be assessed and a community recommendation would be made. Amina was informed of this gathering by Haruna the evening before. She was told she could attend and speak, or she could stay home and have her case represented by Haruna alone. She attended. She sat in a room with 12 people, 8 men and 4 women, all of them older than her, all of them senior to her in the hierarchy of the community, and all of them, she could see immediately, already convinced of the verdict they were going to reach. The elder opened the proceedings. He summarized the situation as he understood it. A young wife who had, against her husband's wishes, attended external gatherings and pursued unauthorized education, thereby damaging the harmony of her home and the standing of her husband. Haruna spoke. He was measured, sympathetic, sorrowful. He said he had tried everything. He said he bore Amina no ill will. He said he only wanted his home restored. 3 other men spoke. They cited religious texts. They cited tradition. They cited the harm to community order when women stepped outside prescribed roles. One of the 4 women, Hawa, the familiar informant, spoke about Amina's pride. About how pride in a young woman was a sickness that, if unchecked, destroyed marriages. Then the elder turned to Amina. You may speak. Amina looked around the room. At the 12 faces. At the weight of expectation pressing from every angle. She breathed. And then she spoke for 11 minutes. She knows it was 11 minutes because she had a watch and she had decided in advance that she would take exactly that amount of time and not 1 second more. She spoke about being married at 16 without consent. About the school bag taken from her room. About the years inside a household where her choices were managed down to nothing. About her children, and what she wanted for them. About the workshops, and what she had learned there. About the legal rights she had discovered she possessed and had been prevented from exercising. She spoke clearly, without accusation, without raising her voice, with the mathematical precision of a woman who had spent 8 years thinking about exactly this moment. The elder let the silence sit for a long time. Then the community's recommendation was delivered. Amina was counseled to return home. To honor her husband. To step back from activities that disrupted her household. To remember her role and her obligations. She was told. And this she found, in a strange way, almost funny, that they understood her concerns. That they were not unsympathetic. But that the community's stability came before an individual woman's aspirations. She thanked them for their time. She went home. She made dinner. She bathed the children. Then she contacted the workshop facilitator and told her everything that had happened. The facilitator, her name was Ngozi, did not tell Amina what to do. She was careful about that. She said this was Amina's life and Amina's decision. And her role was not to prescribe but to inform and support. What Ngozi did was connect Amina with a legal aid organization operating in the region. A woman named Fatima, a paralegal, came to meet Amina at a neutral location, the following Thursday morning while Haruna was at work. Fatima gave Amina 3 hours of information she would have given anything to have at 16. Her legal rights within the marriage. The protections available to her as a mother. What grounds existed for various courses of action. What the practical steps were. What the risks were. All of it, clearly, without judgment. Amina went home and made a decision. She was not going to leave. Not yet, not immediately. Her children were young, her financial independence was non-existent, and she understood that leaving without resources or a plan would likely result in losing access to her children entirely. But she was going to stop pretending. Evening, she sat with Haruna after dinner, in the same front room where her father had delivered his ultimatum, and she spoke. That. Not in the way of a supplicant. Not in the way of a woman asking permission. In the way of a person informing another person of facts. I am going to continue the training program. I am going to qualify as a healthcare worker. I am going to contribute financially to this household. I am not asking your permission. I am telling you what is going to happen, because I believe you deserve to hear it directly from me. Haruna stared at her. Then he said, You will regret this. Amina said, That is possible. But I will regret it knowing I made my own choice. That is different from everything I have done so far. She stood up, cleared the cups from the table, washed them, and went to check on the children. Haruna tried. Over the following months, he tried many things. He withheld money. She found alternative ways. He complained to her father again. Her father came. She listened, thanked him, and continued. He threatened separation. She told him she hoped he would think carefully about what that would mean for the children. He went silent for weeks at a time. She used the silence to study. He could not break what had already survived everything he had already thrown at it. It took Amina 2 years to complete her healthcare assistant qualification. 2 years of studying in fragments, during nap times, after midnight, in the margins of days that were never fully her own. She sat the qualifying examination on a Tuesday morning. She had told Haruna she was going to a medical appointment for the children. She had arranged for a neighbor, a young woman who had become quietly, carefully, an ally, to watch the children. She sat in a room with 40 other candidates and answered every question she had spent 2 years preparing to answer. When the results came, she received them via the organization's office. She had not given the home address. She had passed. She stood outside the organization's building for several minutes and allowed herself to feel the full weight of it. Every restriction. Every threat. Every morning she had studied while the household slept. Every session she had attended on false pretenses. Every time she had heard the word proud used as a weapon against her. She allowed herself to feel all of it. Then she called her mother. Her mother wept. Amina wept. And then they laughed. The particular, slightly hysterical laughter of women who have been holding their breath for years and have finally, briefly, been allowed to exhale. Her first job was at a community health clinic. Part-time, initially. She arranged the hours around the children's school schedule. She told Haruna directly, the evening before she started. He did not speak to her for 3 days. On the 4th day, she deposited her first month's wages into the household account. He saw the statement. He still did not thank her. But he said nothing against it. Money, it turned out, spoke a language that silence could not easily overcome. Amina is 31 years old. She works full-time at a community health clinic in maternal care, the specialism she chose at 9 years old, standing in the red dust of her childhood community, watching women in pain that no one was adequately treating. She is 2 years into a full nursing qualification. She studies at night, as she has always studied. The night, she told me, has always belonged to her. Her marriage is still, as she describes it, complicated. These stories do not often end in clean liberation. Haruna has not become a partner. He has become, over years of Amina's persistent existence, someone who has adjusted to the fact of her. That is not love. But it is a kind of truce. She has considered leaving. She may yet leave. That is her decision, at her pace, on her terms. And the fact that it is her decision, finally, entirely, irreversibly hers, is the most significant thing about it. Her relationship with her father has slowly, carefully, begun to repair. He came to her clinic once, to be seen for a health check, and he sat in the waiting room and watched his daughter work. He did not say much when she came out to greet him. But he took her hand for a moment. It was not an apology. Amina does not know if it will ever become one. But it was something. And she has learned to hold something and not require it to become everything. Her daughter Hasia is 15. She has a school bag. She has opinions about everything. She argues intelligently and at length and with excellent sources. She plans to study law. When Hasia told Amina she wanted to be a lawyer, Amina did not say, "Are you sure?" Or, "That is very difficult." Or, "What about something more practical?" She said, "Then study like the outcome depends on it." Because it does. Hasia said, "Like you did?" Amina said, "Better than I did. You have more time." The notebook from the cooking pot is on a shelf now. In the open. Amina does not hide it anymore. Almost every item on the list has been crossed out. Amina asked me, before I recorded this episode, to say one thing on her behalf. She asked me to say that she does not want to be seen as a victim. She understands that what happened to her was wrong. She has lived through the wrongness of it and come out the other side. But she does not want the primary thing people feel when they hear her name to be pity. She wants them to feel rage. Not at her father. Not at Haruna. Not even at Hawa. Or the 12 people in the community meeting. She wants them to feel rage at the system that produced all of those people and handed each of them a role that harmed her without requiring a single one of them to be consciously cruel. That is the kind of rage, she said, that changes things. The targeted, clear-eyed, structural rage of people who understand that dismantling a system requires seeing it as a system, not as a collection of individual villains who can be removed and replaced. I am telling you her story. What you do with the feeling it leaves in you, that is your part of this conversation. That is Amina's story. I have one question for you. Just one. Where have you seen this? In your family, your community, your country, yourself? Not necessarily at this scale. But in some form. Some version of the thing where a person's life is arranged around them without their consent, and everyone involved believes they are doing something reasonable. Tell me in the comments. Tell me honestly. I read every one. This channel is called Human, not Gender. Because before we are any of the roles assigned to us, before we are daughters or wives, sons or husbands, men or women, we are human. And humans deserve the full, undiminished use of their own lives. Subscribe if you want to hear more. Episode 2 is the story of a man, and a different kind of injustice, one that is equally real and equally ignored. Until then, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and whatever you do, do not look away.